All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're looking at a piece of history that honestly feels straight out of a Hollywood thriller, but every single detail we're about to cover, it is 100% real. We're unpacking the extraordinary, repeated attempts to bring down a totalitarian regime from the inside, specifically focusing on the intense efforts to eliminate Adolf Hitler. You know, history usually remembers the broad strokes of World War II, but today, we're zooming way in on the agonizingly close calls that could have literally altered the entire trajectory of the 20th century.
And what's truly staggering here is that number, over 40. Throughout his rise and his rule, Hitler faced more than 40 separate assassination plots. It wasn't just one or two isolated incidents by lone wolves. It was a persistent, decades-long effort by all sorts of different individuals and groups who realized the catastrophic path Germany was on. Yet, despite the sheer volume of these attempts, absolutely none of them achieved their ultimate goal.
Which brings us to the absolutely crucial question of this whole explainer. Why did they all fail? I mean, was it just some unbelievable streak of luck, or was there something else protecting him? As we go through this, we're going to look closely at the microscopic details, those tiny, seemingly insignificant variables that completely thwarted massive, history-altering preparations. We're going to break down the anatomy of these failed plots and see exactly where things went wrong.
Section 1. 13 Lost Minutes. Our story begins in Munich back in 1939, just weeks after World War II broke out. And surprisingly, the mastermind behind this first major plot wasn't some military elite or part of a huge resistance network. He was a lone German carpenter named Georg Elser.
This one brilliantly illustrates the brutal, almost absurd reality of historical chance. Elser realized early on that removing Hitler was the only way to prevent a wider, bloodier war. He knew his target spoke at the Burgerbräu beer hall in Munich every single year on November 8th. It was a fixed, completely predictable schedule. So Elser spent months, literally weeks upon weeks, secretly working inside that beer hall at night, painstakingly carving out a hidden space inside a pillar near the speaker's podium just to plant a timed explosive. But all those months of meticulous preparation, they collided head-on with something entirely out of his control: bad weather, which caused a sudden change in his target's travel plans.
The tension here is just unbelievable. Picture this. It's the night of November 8th. The hall is packed, the speech is well underway. But because of that bad weather, Hitler wrapped up and left the beer hall early, at exactly 9:07 p.m. Just 13 minutes later, at 9:20 p.m., Elser's bomb detonated. At 9:21 p.m., the ceiling collapsed. The blast completely destroyed the podium, injured 63 people, and killed 7. But the primary target was already gone. A master plan, prepared over agonizing months, failed entirely because of just 13 lost minutes.
Moving on to Section 2, the frozen plane bomb. Fast forward to 1943. By this point, getting close to the target had become incredibly difficult. His schedule was a closely guarded secret, and his security was deeply layered. The resistance had shifted over to a small group of military officers. This included Henning von Tresckow, who saw firsthand that the regime's reckless decisions on the Eastern Front were dragging Germany toward total disaster.
Tresckow saw his window of opportunity during a flight from Smolensk back to East Prussia in March of '43. It was a highly calculated smuggling operation. Step 1. Disguise the bomb to look exactly like 2 bottles of Cointreau liquor. Step 2. Just before takeoff, Tresckow's accomplice secretly started the 30-minute timer fuse by crushing a small glass vial filled with corrosive liquid. Step 3. Tresckow casually handed the package to Lieutenant Colonel Heinz Brandt, an unknowing officer flying with Hitler, claiming it was for a friend to settle a lost bet. The ticking clock had officially started.
The plan was for the plane to go down near Minsk, making the whole thing look like a tragic aviation accident. But absolutely nothing happened. The flight landed totally safely. Why? Because this flawless plan was literally frozen by a cold luggage compartment. The dangerously low temperatures in the plane's hold messed with the detonator, causing the timer to fail. And suddenly the resistance was in terrifying danger. That unexploded bomb was still with Brandt. To save the entire network from exposure, Tresckow had to calmly call Brandt on the phone, pretend he'd given him the wrong package, and send his accomplice on a desperate undercover mission the very next day to physically swap the bomb for real liquor. They survived to fight another day, but the plot had completely failed.
Section 3. Failed close-range attempts. So after that aircraft plot failed, the military resistance realized that keeping their distance just wasn't working. If they couldn't neutralize the target from afar, they were going to have to get dangerously close.
They started using routine presentations of new army uniforms to get officers into the very same room as their target. But what followed was a cascading series of total failures. First, Axel von den Bussche planned to sacrifice himself by detonating a device at close range, but an Allied air raid literally destroyed the railway carrying the specific uniforms needed for the presentation. Next, Heinrich von Klees was chosen for a similar suicide mission, but that meeting was abruptly canceled at the absolute last minute. Finally, in July 1944, Helmut Stiff actually got close enough. The conditions were perfect, but at the absolute decisive moment, human nature took over, and he hesitated. No explosion, no change in power.
Section 4. Valkyrie's fatal details. By the summer of 1944, Germany was facing total collapse from the Allies in the West and the Soviets in the East. Klaus von Stauffenberg knew time was essentially up, so he took charge of Operation Valkyrie, which was a massive plan to not only neutralize Hitler, but to launch a rapid military coup and seize control of Berlin.
On July 20th, 1944, Stauffenberg flew to the Wolf Slayer in East Prussia. And what's really fascinating here, and kind of heartbreaking, is the stark contrast between the plan and the reality. The plan relied on a sealed concrete bunker, which would naturally amplify the blast of 2 explosive charges placed under a standard table. But reality was vastly different. The meeting was moved up unexpectedly. Stauffenberg was rushed and only managed to arm a single explosive charge. Even worse, the location was changed to a brighter, airy room with open windows that allowed the blast pressure to escape. And on top of all that, the room featured a map table with a massive, heavy oak support base.
So Stauffenberg placed his leather briefcase under the table, close to the target, and then excused himself to take a phone call. But right after he left, one tiny detail shifted the entire course of history. An officer unknowingly moved the briefcase just a few feet, placing it on the other side of that heavy oak table support base. When the bomb detonated, splintering wood and filling the room with smoke, that thick wooden support actually shielded Hitler from the brunt of the blast. Stauffenberg saw the explosion from outside and launched the coup in Berlin, believing he'd succeeded. But once the shocking message arrived that Hitler was still alive, the entire foundation of Operation Valkyrie collapsed.
Which brings us to Section 5, the price of failure. The aftermath of these plots was swift, it was brutal, and it was devastating, as the regime violently struck back to regain total control over the country.
The human cost here is deeply sobering. Stauffenberg and his immediate circle were overpowered and executed in the courtyard of the Bendler block that very same night. And this triggered a massive crackdown. Thousands of people across the military and civilian society were arrested and dragged before the People's Court, which, let's be honest, was nothing more than a political weapon at that point. Henning von Tresckow, the mastermind of that 1943 plane plot, ended his own life on the Eastern Front just to avoid capture and torture. And Georg Elser, the carpenter who acted entirely alone back in 1939, he had been held in captivity for years and was ultimately executed at Dachau in April 1945. These were incredible human risks that ended in the ultimate sacrifice. You know, we can never know for certain how history would have changed if just one of these 40 plots had actually succeeded. If the weather hadn't changed that night in Munich, if the plane's luggage hold had been just a little warmer, or if a briefcase hadn't been moved a mere few feet. But this history leaves us with an incredibly powerful lesson about responsibility, choice, and the sheer cost of silence. Even inside the darkest totalitarian regime, there were individuals who chose to resist from within, knowing full well the terrifying risks involved. So what do you think is the ultimate takeaway from their sacrifices? It's a profound question to leave you with today. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the details that shape our world.